Welcome guys, after a sensational British Grand Prix, I'm going to go through and rate each and every one of the drivers, how they got on over the weekend, and my predictions review, which went better than I expected, to be honest. So let's get straight to it, starting with number one, Lewis Hamilton. Yes, Lewis Hamilton finally wins 3 years on after that Saudi 2021 win, his last win. He was massively emotional on that cool down lap, and you can see why. It was a massive release, wasn't it? And it was still interesting to see that he was almost waiting for this first win to let that release and the negative energy of 21 go, despite him saying like he's kind of moved on from that. It didn't look like he really has he? And it now maybe we'll see a fresh Lewis, knowing that the demons have gone and the doubts, like he said, that he's had over the last couple of years, which is interesting from a 7-time world championship to still have them thoughts, to think, have you still got it, are you good enough? I guess that's just the true champion, and that's the mindset that they all sort of live with, isn't it? Natural human instinct to say, you know, to push, to keep going so many years on. And another win, absolutely the first driver after 300 races to get a win. First time someone's won 9 times at a single venue, and he performed brilliantly, didn't he, over the weekend. A second place for the start, qualifying, beaten by his teammate. He was probably disappointed with that, but it's what we've come to expect. They did say though that his car was more set up for race pace, so that might explain it a little bit. And actually, when the weather came down, he was better than George, wasn't he? His car seemed to, the setup seemed better on Lewis's 4 race day than George. Made the crucial pass, and that was actually, when you look back, was massively important, which got him the win. I mean, because it was fine margins, wasn't it, really, throughout the whole race. At any one point you thought any of the top 3, 4 could win it, so it was never like one was running away with it. I mean, early on it looked comfortable for the Mercedes, George and Lewis second, pegging and keeping a comfortable gap to Max Verstappen. The McLarens, Norris lost out to Verstappen, so was sort of bunged up behind him a little bit up until lap 15, and when the rain and the weather conditions changed, it looked like McLaren's to lose. And well, at one point it was, wasn't it? Lewis passed George Russell crucially before the McLarens came up, and then the rain went really bad, didn't it? Both went off the 2 Mercedes. We've seen Norris go off, we've seen Piastri go off as well. Kept it together though, and he just stuck with the McLarens, wasn't he? He didn't get dropped massively, despite sort of that massive advantage for like a lap and a half or that the McLarens had. It then seemed to equal out a little bit, and then we got more of a steady-ish race for 4 or 5 laps, and then Inters came on, and it was a shame there then that we got a bit of a steadying of the race. We got more of a position of where things were, and it was a shame that George Russell retired actually at that point, because it was interesting to see what he would have done. But Lewis was right in the mix, wasn't he? And then crucially he pitted with Max Verstappen a lap earlier than Lando Norris, and I think that sown the doubt, didn't they? The McLaren were already a bit doubtful. They made the mistake of not double pitting or double stacking with Oscar and Norris in the first round, and now they were, because Mercedes and Red Bull have both split, one went soft, one went hard, they seemed to lose focus on themselves, didn't they? And they went for the wrong strategy in the end for Lando Norris. The soft, crucially it was a slow stop. Lando Norris overstepped on his pits, slow stop, and that crucially meant Lewis got through, and it was about a second and a half. So again, crucial that, because I think had he come out behind Norris, I still don't think he would have won it, because them two battling it out would have lost time, and that would have allowed Max Verstappen to close up, and I think he would have passed the pair of them, and so it was just one of them things where it all sort of lined up, and Lewis then just pulled up 15 or 14 laps on the softs, which were absolutely incredible World Championship laps, where you know he's a true champion, where he just managed them tyres all the way to the end. We've seen early on people getting 7-8 laps out of them softs, and then for you seen someone at the back early on, they went sort of 10-15 laps on the softs, but they were 4 or 5 seconds a lap slower. So it was Absolutely incredible that he managed to keep pace with the hard tyre, which was actually the tyre for the race. One of the best tyres for that race. If you looked at what Sergio Perez was doing on the hards, he was absolutely flying when he put them on, and then his race went downhill from there, didn't it? But Lewis was absolutely incredible, managed so well, a fantastic win. A 10 out of 10 for me, because it was just such an overall, a really good weekend. He beats his teammate, he made the crucial pass when he needed to, got past Lando Norris and made the laps count on his outlap for that, and then just brought it home brilliantly well. There was definitely pressure on from Max, and he had to be consistent. Pressure to not make any mistakes, because had he made one he would have lost it, and to bring it home, absolutely fantastic. Next up, Max Verstappen, second place finish. To start fourth, finish second. He's won from fourth before, hasn't he? And early on, it looked like it'd be a difficult race. He made the crucial pass on Lando Norris early on, kept him behind him for sort of 10-15 laps. Then got passed by Norris and looked like he was in a fight to keep Carlos Sainz behind him, didn't he? So early on, that Red Bull didn't have any pace whatsoever. And then I think it was only really towards the end where the hard tyres came, and that really suited the Red Bull, and he was absolutely flying from that point onwards. He had Oscar Piastri in his gearbox lap 17 and then passed by him. He made the call to come in lap 27 for the Inters. Christian Horner saying later that actually that was probably one lap too early, because he overheated them tyres and then really struggled from there on that set, which was probably explains why he was never really able to get away from Carlos Sainz on the Inters, and George Russell was closing, wasn't he, until he retired. So two horrible stints, but one mega stint at the end when it counted. And to come home second, beats his championship rival Lando Norris. He won't be too bothered by Lewis winning, because it doesn't really affect the championship. He extends his lead at the front, and so he's beaten his main rivals in a weekend where that car just, well, it wasn't quick at any point, was it? He lined up in fourth place in the race. He was slower for 2/3 of the race, at least. You've got to say that. And then just to make it count and punish McLaren for mistakes, that's what Red Bull do, and he's been absolutely tremendous from that. A brilliant outcome, I've got to say, for Max Verstappen, although I think he'll be disappointed with the whole weekend to see how slow, and they're not really the fastest car on there anymore, Red Bull, and Max knows now he's got a fight in his hands to the end of the season, and if he can keep picking off the wins and these small wins of beating his championship rivals, I think that the championship is really kind of sewn up for him still, because of that early advantage that he took, but he's still making it count and doing the job, even when the car's not doing great. A 9 out of 10 weekend for me, because I thought he was really, really good. Lando Norris, third place finish. Mixed weekend, started there, finished there in the end. And he was kicking himself, really downbeat, wasn't he? Because I think he felt that the mistake was made to go onto the softs. I think the other pit strategies were pretty bang on, really, weren't they? He came at the Inters on the right time, the same time as Lewis did on his, and then switched to the slicks at the right time as well. But it was just the fact that they went for the softs rather than going for their brand new medium, which they stuck on Oscar Piastri, and he was flying at the end. And had they picked that tyre, I'm sure he would have gone on to win, because he would have been able to push that much harder. I think they were faster than the Red Bull, and on the right tyre at the end, I think he would have had enough to pass Lewis Hamilton, who was struggling on the softs, or wasn't going as fast as he probably could have had he had a medium. I think even Mercedes might look back and think they probably should have gone medium, because it would have been a lot more comfortable for them at the end. But Lewis took the win, so it doesn't make a difference on that. But Lando Norris, it really did, and it was 2 pit stops calls for both McLaren drivers, which really cost them both this weekend, wasn't it? And it's the whole team package which we're seeing at Red Bull work. It's not quite happened for Lando Norris. I mean, he should have probably won in Canada, Austria. he had the fastest car there and should have won in Silverstone. So that's, you know, at least 2 of the last 3 races, Lando Norris should have come home with P1. So to another loss, you could see why he was so disappointed in the end. And it was actually disappointing because early on they were flying when he, you know, passed the 2 Mercedes on an absolute charge, had it under control when they were both out on front in the Inters, and then just had to pick the right tyres to get him through to the end. And a mistake from himself in the pits, and then the wrong tyres didn't help him at all on that one. So overall, yeah, I've got a feel for him. Disappointing. A 7 out of 10 for me for this weekend. 4th place, Oscar Piastri, and he was another one really disappointed at the end, wasn't he? Started 5th, finished 1 place up. Again, he was up to P2, past Max Verstappen, past the 2 Mercedes, and then looked comfortable. And then, yeah, the big mistake here, didn't double stack at that time. He had a bit of a gap there. He could have slowed a little bit to give him some time behind, to keep Lewis Hamilton behind him a little bit, to try and not lose too much time on the double stack. And I'm surprised McLaren didn't do that, because Mercedes did. They double stacked with Russell and Lewis Hamilton. It was absolutely the right call. Russell lost a couple of seconds, but nowhere near what Piastri lost going 1 lap round. I mean, he lost nearly 15 seconds. Lando Norris was 5 seconds behind him when he came into pit on the next lap round. So it was that really destroyed his race, and he struggled from there. He had too much to make up on the top 3 at the front, because them 3 were actually really close together, weren't they? Comfortable in 4th, but overall he was disappointed again. Another bad strategy call on his side of the garage. I'm going to go for another 7 out of 10, because I think overall he did a really good job, but it was just team strategy call, which again, could he have played a part in that one? I think most definitely. When you're calling on the double stack, that's sort of more of the team's decision, not the driver's really. I don't think there. His call to say, look, we need to switch. I think they knew that. It was just whether the team were ready to commit to sort of double stacking. And yeah, he sadly lost out there. 5th place, Carlos Sainz, and I think he did a really good job in terms of, he started 7th, finished 5th. He got obviously picked up a position from the DNF of George Russell, but also picked off a McLaren, which I don't think he thought at any point in the weekend that they were faster than the McLaren. So to beat one is a good call on the strategy to go in the Inters when he did. And then he was like right up in the back of the gearbox of Max Verstappen, wasn't he, at one point? And then I think once Max got into the rhythm of things a little bit, he was comfortable from there onwards. But overall, I've got to say it was a very good weekend from him. Stuck on the softs in lap 51, went for the fastest lap, so an extra point gained from him, which is crucial, because that championship battle now for 2nd place is really hotting up, isn't it? Mercedes have now, with double wins, back-to-back wins, thrown themselves right in the mix, not too far behind McLaren, who are right up there with Ferrari. So it's getting tense, that battle now, and Ferrari really need to sort of iron out the mistakes that they made with Leclerc, another strategy area on his side. But Carlos Sainz absolutely did a fantastic job. I'm going to go for an 8 out of 10, because I think he really did outperform the car with that position. And it was a tremendous 6th place finish for Nico Hülkenberg. A fantastic weekend from him. He's finally putting it all together, didn't he? A 6th place in qualifying. His start wasn't good at all, was he? Dropped 3 places, and then from there on at 9th place you were thinking, oh, he's going to be in a battle just to keep in the points, but to bring it back up and take home 6th place. The right calls on the strategy, and that really helped him. But the car had pace, didn't he? And it wasn't absolutely miles behind. What finished 8 or 9 seconds behind Carlos Sainz. So really good pace from that Haas team this weekend. He can be massively happy with that. Overall, you've got to say a really good weekend. He's now bringing it all together, isn't he? Full package. Nico Hülkenberg and Sauber will be massively happy with the driver that they got in their hands, and Haas will be, well, really disappointed, because he's really bought them up in the Constructors' Championship now. They're only 2 or 3 points behind Racing Bulls, which is where they started the season. Has been absolutely tremendous. They bought upgrades, they're now working, aren't they? Whereas before we've seen Haas sort of drop away after having a decent car. This time round, their in-season upgrades are working, and they're actually pushing up again, aren't they, into Yeah, 6th place is absolutely fantastic. A 10 out of 10 for me because he was brilliant all weekend. Next up, a 7th place finisher, Lance Stroll. I think this was probably Aston Martin's best weekend for quite some time. They've been languishing way down. It was horrible last weekend where they were 15th and 18th or something like that. So much better from them this weekend, right up at the front there. Probably still looking at why the cars changed so much. Is it really circuit characteristics or... but they struggled in Silverstone last year as well, didn't they? But much better weekend, some solid points for this team. Lance Stroll did the job, didn't he? He's beating Fernando Alonso more consistently now this season, which is, well, he was absolutely nowhere near him last time out. He's beating him in qualifying and in the race. So this time out, by a lap, 33, 34, he was 7-8 seconds ahead of Fernando Alonso. So he's done the right job, to call the strategy right, and brought home some solid points. He can be massively happy with that. Overall, I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10 because I've been harsh on Lance Stroll, and he has really upped his performance to beat one of the greatest drivers on the grid in Fernando Alonso, and yeah, well deserved 8 out of 10 for me for him. 8th place for Fernando Alonso, comes up behind his teammate and tops off what is a solid weekend of some good points for Aston Martin. After he's probably had the 2 or 3 of his probably the worst races of his career, hasn't he? And he'll be happy just to come home. Some solid points. He'll be also disappointed he's been beaten by his teammate, but Fernando Alonso can, look overall and think, started 10th, made up a couple of places, finished in 8th place, and some good points for the team. He can be happy with that. I'm going to go for a 7 out of 10 for him. 9th place, Alex Albon, some points for the Williams finally. He had a really good weekend actually. His qualifying was really good, just set himself up for some points, didn't he? Race start didn't go too well at all, did he? Dropped 3 places down to 12th with some damage. And from there on, with damage, you thought, oh, this could be tricky and horrible for Alex Albon, considering the car worked around Silverstone, and you thought, some good points were on the cards. But to come home with damage, with points, I think you've got to say an absolutely tremendous job from him. I'm going to go for a 9 out of 10 because I think that's well deserved. Finally some points for the Williams boys. In 10th place, Yuki Tsunoda returns back into the points. He's had a couple of horrible races, and finally another one where you thought, right, he needed this, didn't he? Because he's gone on a run of 2 or 3 races with some poor results, beaten by his teammate, and finally he pulled it together. A much better weekend overall, better in qualifying, and to come home with some points, he can be really happy with that. I'm going to go for an 8 out of 10 for Yuki Tsunoda. Next up, Logan Sargeant finished in 11th place, probably one of his better weekends. He was much closer on the pace to Alex Albon, made it into Q2, which was actually tremendous from him considering he's been way out of there for quite some time. Started 12th, finished 11th. He was right up in the gearbox of Alex Albon early on, wasn't he? Kept within the DRS zone for a lot of the time early on. I think he'll be a bit disappointed he's missed out on some points because finally it looked like some could have been on the cards for him considering the Williams look strong here. So I think he'll be disappointed with that, but overall a much better complete weekend from Logan Sargeant. He needs significantly more of these to show that he deserves a seat in, or keep that seat in the Williams. It does look like that seat's up in the air, but can he now turn it around with a really strong second half of the season? It's really in his hands. The car looked better here at Silverstone, but even when it's not good, he needs to just be consistently closer to his teammate Alex Albon. I'm going to go for a 7 out of 10 because I thought it was better from him. I've been so harsh on him a lot recently, and just to come out with that performance, I think that's much better, but more still needs to be done from him on this side just to pick up some points. It'll be absolutely tremendous from him. 12th place, Kevin Magnussen, and well, his qualifying session set him up for a horrible weekend, didn't he? Started 17th, and to finish 12th. I think overall they'll be disappointed because his teammate finished in 6th place. He didn't get any points, so it was just going to be hard work from where he started so far down. Ran in P11 and then pit lap 38, made a decent race after a poor qualifying, but as I say, he'll be disappointed, beaten by his teammate. I'm going to go for a 6 out of 10. because I think that car was good, and look what Nico did. And you compared really against your teammate here in F1, aren't you? 13th place, Daniel Ricciardo, and he's been comfortably beaten by his teammate this weekend. He's dropped into what we've seen consistently over most of the season, haven't we, where he's not just been quite fast enough. Missed out on points. I don't think that car was really in there for points. I know Yuki picked up one, but I think they were really looking for that one spot. So if Yuki got it, I don't think Daniel was going to, unless he beat his teammate, he was going to pick that up. And he never really put himself in that position. He was beaten by him in qualifying, and in the race he didn't really set any of the timings alight at any point, did he, at all? So overall, I think disappointing from Daniel Ricciardo. 5 out of 10 for me. A 14th place finish for Charles Leclerc. Started 11th and actually was up there with in 8th place, didn't he? Made up 3 places at the start, so was doing really well. And then strangely, right up behind his teammate, and the 2 Ferraris looked like probably getting the best out of the weekend that they could have hoped for, with 7th and 8th where they were running at the time. And then he went for the gamble, which I can kind of understand, because had he got it right, he could have, made up 3 or 4 places potentially. But yeah, got that horribly wrong. He was one of 2 to pit with Sergio Perez, and then to stick with it, I could probably understand that to some extent, because it could have just been 1 or 2 laps more and the rain came pouring down. The fact that it was 6 or 7 meant they just lost far too much time, and then it was just from there on difficult. Didn't really recover too well, I suppose, but it was just horrible weekend overall. He was so disappointed at the end. It's another weekend where the strategy call on his side of the garage has been wrong, and we've seen this far too many times. And I think they need to really, Ferrari have gone from being so consistent early on, weren't they, where they're picking up good points, got themselves in that solid position in second in the constructors, and now they're falling back into old Ferrari ways, aren't we? So they sort of need to really stop that quite quickly. And Charles, after a magnificent Monaco win, has just had some horrible, absolute stinkers of a race for the last 3, and I'd be hoping for better in Hungary. But a 3 out of 10 for me for this weekend. It wasn't great at all. A 15th place finish for Valtteri Bottas. Yeah, this car was just not good at all, was it? He started well, was up in 16th place, but then lost 2 places early on from a decent grid spot, and then just that car was slow. I mean, the best he could have hoped, he beat Ocon and he beats his teammate, which is probably the best he could have hoped for, and he beat Sergio Perez as well, for that matter. So yeah, the car is so bad. To beat them 3 is probably the best he could have hoped for. So decent outcome in the end. I'm going to go for an 8 out of 10 surprisingly, because I think that car was so bad, and to beat the cars that he did, hats off to him. Absolute credit, Valtteri Bottas. 16th place for Ocon, and it's a tough weekend for them, wasn't it? It started in 18th. Yes, he's finished 2 places ahead of that position, but he was just way down. He made a nice move on the outside of Zhou Guanyu early on, didn't he? And then from there on, it was just a bit of a struggle. The car wasn't good around here at all after some decent weekends before that where points were on. Yeah, Alpine struggled here. I thought they would struggle here, but not as bad as they did. Overall, a weekend to forget for Ocon and the Alpine team overall. I'm going for a 3 out of 10 for him. In 17th place is Sergio Perez, and he made up 5 places early on. He started from the pit lane. He pit for Inters way too early, just like Sergio Perez, and was way down back down to 17 and lap 25, and then didn't really make any progress from there, which is actually the more disappointing thing, isn't it? Christian Horner have now said that it's unsustainable that he continues to not pick up points. He knows that the battle is on right at the front, and he really does need to up his game. Another horrible weekend, poor qualifying where he put himself out, and yeah, it looks like his seat is really under threat, doesn't it? Because it's just all done by himself, and I don't think there's any more that Red Bull can do. They've done everything they can in terms of supporting him. He just really needs to get his head down and make it work somehow. A 1 out of 10 for me. 18th place for Zhou Guanyu, started in 14th, which was actually a really good starting position, but then from there on his race just went downhill. yeah, back down 5 places early on, and just from there onwards the car was slow. He was at one point sort of 3-4 seconds a lap slower, a couple of seconds a lap slower than his teammate in fact as well. He went for the softs at the early on the start, and that was absolutely the wrong choice, because I'm surprised they did that, because they knew that rain was coming. So your idea would be to stick on tyres that would get you into the window to pit potentially for inters. If it went that you went slightly longer than you wanted, so be it. Or unless they completely expected the rain to come in, 6 or 7 laps, it was always the wrong call to start on softs, and I think that's why it was only him and one other driver that did that. Another a poor weekend from Zhou Guanzu. He needs to sort of get himself together and up his game, doesn't he? But yeah, I'm going to go for a 1 out of 10, because I think it was just bad. He was just last all race. And then we've got the DNFs. George Russell, DNF, disappointing, because he was on pole, and then to not finish would look like the double stack cost him. He was back down behind Max Verstappen. Luckily, he would have been behind Oscar Piastri as well, wouldn't he? But luckily, Oscar, they messed their strategy up more than Mercedes did. Well, it wasn't really his fault. George Russell, he was so close to Lewis Hamilton, had to double stack. And then the DNF when he was closing on Max Verstappen, which is a shame because we lost out on a real battle. And to have him in the mix would have been brilliant right at the end. And I'm sure he might have gone for a different tyre strategy to Lewis, just to try anything to win, because that's his game. I absolutely love him for that. So disappointing. But overall, I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10 because I think he did really, really well up until that point. And the other one, Pierre Gasly, didn't take to the start. Absolutely kicking the teeth for that Alpine to just go around the formation lap, turn into the pits and call it quits. Horrible weekend for Pierre Gasly. No rating because he didn't even do one racing lap. And let's quickly get to the predictions review. Well, I thought for pole position it'd be Max Verstappen, Norris second, and George Russell third. Well, who would have predicted a Mercedes 1-2, Russell and Hamilton first and second, and Lando Norris third, so got that fairly wrong. And then for the race, I thought it would be Norris, Hamilton and Verstappen, and how close was I for that, because actually had Norris got the right tyres on that at the second stop, it would have been a Norris, Hamilton, potentially Verstappen 1, 2, 3, and it would have been an absolutely crazy prediction to get that one right. I felt it was a bit out there putting Hamilton up there. I knew he was going to have a good weekend, I felt it, but for him to go and win was absolutely incredible. I got it wrong in terms of the order, but the top 3 was right. It was Hamilton, Verstappen, Norris. I thought it would be a good weekend for Norris and Mercedes. It definitely was for Mercedes. Norris, so strategy call, got it wrong for him, and I thought it would be a bad weekend for Ferrari, and yes, it was horrible for Charles Leclerc. Carlos Sainz wasn't too bad at all, actually, was it? They're not fighting for podiums. Their car isn't there ready for that yet. But overall, I've got to say, not a good weekend for Ferrari. They've lost ground again to the guys in front of, behind them in the championship, to McLaren and Mercedes. So some big changes and some good upgrades are needed. Next up, Hungary. It should be fantastic. Mercedes went well there last time, and they're on a charge, aren't they, with the last 2 wins from the last 2 races. Can't bet against him. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment as always. See you next time.